Junior Valentine, thanks again. With typical Caribbean exuberance for celebration, my friends in Haiti are posting about Carnival on Facebook. I clicked on a link Friday and was transported by music video to the southern coastal town of Jacmel. That is a focal point for Carnival celebrations running for a couple of weeks prior to the beginning of the season of Lent. Artists in Jacmel are known for making papier-mâché masks that figure prominently in energetic street dancing and parades. The colorful masks vary in size from life-sized up to car-sized, and they depict animals, monsters, politicians, abstract creatures, you name it. Just 1 year ago, the feeling in Haiti was far more somber. The earthquake of January 11th devastated not only the capital city of Port-au-Prince, but also Jacmel and surrounding areas. Following the quake, even those with houses intact were unwilling to sleep inside at night for fear that aftershocks would send roofs and walls crashing down upon them. I serve on the board of trustees of a nonprofit that supports 3 homes in Haiti for former street children, child slaves, and children with special needs. 2 out of those 3 homes were destroyed on January 11th, with 1 loss of life. Lutheran seminarian Ben Larson from Wisconsin was killed when the ceiling collapsed on him. Somehow his wife and several other guests standing just feet away were spared. My favorite small hotel near Jacmel slipped into the sea that day. One friend even reported that the seafloor around Jacmel had risen so much that the waterline permanently receded 1/4 mile out to sea. As 2010 Carnival festivities were necessarily scaled back, local artists were disappointed, and of course the already fragile economy took a further hit. But this year the celebration of Carnival has roared back. I read that although Haiti's tourism industry still is struggling, the country's cultural identity and heritage is considered a key to reconstruction. This week, the residents of Jacmel have focused on constructing intricate paper masks and creatures, often scary, but mostly beautiful icons of the imagination. Icons of the imagination. What is it about the making and the wearing of masks, a practice imported to the Caribbean from Europe, that stirs human beings and our imaginations? It's certainly not something limited to Jacmel, Rio, or New Orleans. Masks and people go a long way back. The famed caves at Lascaux, France, contain depictions of humans wearing animal masks over 10,000 years ago. Folks from cultures with rich mask-making traditions also wonder where it all came from. I read a story told in China that seeks to explain the origin of the colorful masks used in Chinese opera. In the northern Shi dynasty, there was a prince named Warrior Lan Ling who was handsome, and his face was said to be as beautiful as a lady. One day he was called to lead the soldiers to fight the enemy in battle. He felt a bit worried that once he went to the battlefield, his beautiful face could not intimidate the enemy. So he carved a ferocious wooden mask and he wore it during wartime. Once he charged forward, they swept away all the enemies. Fountain Street Church had a long association with the late Joseph Campbell, who spoke here regularly and led small group discussions of his research into comparative mythology. Campbell's Masks of God book and series on PBS include a chapter called Masks of Eternity, in which he demonstrates the knowledge that ancient peoples had that their images were not the God itself, but only a mask which was used to make the transcendent visible. He describes the failure of reading metaphor as fact, of mistaking the mask for the real thing, and how this tendency has shaped the world around us. During my first weeks here, I've learned of another old tradition at Fountain Street, the March of the Goblins at Halloween. The origins are shrouded in mythology, but I can picture it now. Kids marching into the sanctuary on the Sunday closest to Halloween. The Oz head mounted on the balcony there above the chancel, complete with glowing eyes and even smoke. Kids trick-or-treating up and down for UNICEF. Campbell speaks in his sermons of his delight with what Fountain Street is doing and claims that this is an embodiment of what he sees as necessary in modern religion. Sometimes we try on a mask intentionally, but then it scares us. Physician and author Lisa Rankin, from whose book I shared a reading earlier, tells the story of taking her 4-year-old daughter to the pirate store in San Francisco in preparation for Halloween. She got a pirate mask, an eye patch, a black swashbuckler hat, and a sword. She was very clear with us that she didn't want to be a nice pirate. She wanted to be a mean, scary pirate that kills people. Go figure. She was so excited to get dressed up. And as soon as we got home, she donned her garb and ran to the mirror to check herself out. But after taking a gander at herself, she screamed bloody murder and stripped off the costume. When we asked her what was wrong, she said, "I'm too scary." And now she wants to be a fairy instead. It got me thinking about the masks we wear, Rankin continues. What about you? Do you wear masks? Do they protect you or hold you back? Do they make you appear more attractive or less so? Are you scared when you look at yourself in the mirror? Or do you like what you see? How many times has one of us done a good job of masking our true emotions with a false appearance? Paul Laurence Dunbar's poem, "We Wear the Mask," conveys the notion that someone may appear one way on the outside, but may be feeling the total opposite on the inside. In this poem, the mask is a metaphor for the psychological facade that conceals the true feelings of the mask wearer. The son of freed slaves from Kentucky, Dunbar has written a poem that cries out with the hurt that enslaved people throughout history have suffered. When Dunbar wrote, "With torn and bleeding hearts we smile," the agony felt by him becomes palpable. To be able to endure daily persecution, those who suffer must somehow draw upon their inner strength. A smile is sometimes worn to camouflage one's true emotions. It's not hard to imagine why people who were humiliated, held in servitude, disrespected, would mask their true thoughts and emotions. To make daily life easier, they might have spoken and acted the ways that their owners dictated. If they hadn't complied with the expectations of the oppressors, life itself could have been taken away from them. But there were some things that could never be taken away from them, their inner strength and their spirituality. No matter how poorly slaves were treated, how hard they had to work, or how little they had, they did have control of their own thoughts and beliefs. These could never be taken from them. And the notion that one's spirituality can offer a means of coping, of relief from a dreadful situation, is evident in Dunbar's lines, "We smile, but, oh, great Christ, our cries to thee from tortured souls arise." When all else had failed, slaves could pray and feel that God had heard them. At last, their cries would be heard, their prayers answered, and their hearts relieved. Dunbar avoids specifically mentioning slavery and the suffering of the enslaved. There's a universality to these lines that could stand as a lament on behalf of all people who are forced to wear a mask. The girl who hides her pregnancy from her parents. The boy who defensively humors an abusive parent. The soldier under fire who writes home that all is well when all is not well. One may fairly argue that the poem is about every human being. Who, after all, has not worn a mask on occasion to conceal hurt, frustration, and disappointment?